Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for coming today, and welcome to our immigration Q&A session. Tonight, we are joined by recent graduates and international students from institutions all across Canada and internationally from outside of Canada. My name is Han, and I will be moderating your session tonight. Welcome, everyone. First, I have a few housekeeping items to go over. Just a few logistics to make sure that everything is covered and everything goes smoothly this evening. So all participants have been muted. There is no need to use your video. You should be able to hear via your computer audio device, and the session is currently being recorded. At the end of the session, we will also be asking a quick poll, so please take a second to send your feedback because we're always looking to improve. I also wanted to provide some information about Devant. Devant is a subsidiary of Academica Group, and Academica Group has been around for over 20 years. They are the largest company providing research and consulting expertise to colleges and universities across Canada. They focus on student recruitment, student success, and career development. And Academica Group started Devant because they saw the challenges that recent graduates have when they're looking to establish themselves in Canada. So the word Devant in French means in front of. So we believe that our services and support will bring you in front of the rest of your journey to stay, work, and succeed in Canada. So the organization like Devant is entirely set up to provide assistance to international students like yourselves. We do have an events page. If you go to our website at devant.ca/all events, here you will see upcoming panel sessions as well as sessions such as the resume format. So please feel free to share with your family and friends who would like to come. September 16th, there will be an expert panel on careers in data science, quite interesting, as well as an upcoming career cafe. So again, my name is Han, and I would like to introduce you to our panelist. She is Elizabeth Long. She is a leading immigration lawyer in Canada. She is an active advocate of immigrant and refugee rights in Canada and frequently presents and advises on immigration issues to organizations, universities, members of parliament, unions, and the media. She has also testified several times before the Parliamentary Standing Committee on Citizenship and Immigration on various immigration policies. Elizabeth holds a Juris Doctor Law degree from the University of Toronto and a Bachelor's of Arts degree with honors in psychology from Memorial University of Newfoundland. She also holds a Master of Law degree from Osgoode Hall Law School, York University, where she focused on the intersection between immigration and labor and employment law for foreign workers. She has been certified by the Law Society of Ontario as a specialist in citizenship and immigration law, which is a very prestigious list of which only approximately 65 lawyers in Canada belong. So Elizabeth speaks English and Mandarin. So I'm going to pass over the floor to Elizabeth. Welcome, Elizabeth, to tonight's immigration session.
Well, thank you so much for having me here. It's great to be here. What we're going to be doing today is we're going to be talking about different parts of immigration. So every month, Devant and we're going to be presenting on these sessions on immigration. The first part is going to be just a presentation, and the second part will be answering your questions. Now, what we're going to do with my presentation is we're going to first talk about some basic things that you need to know for your temporary residence. And every time we're going to talk about this, these are things that you must make sure you know in order to make sure you keep your status. And then we're going to have a special presentation on different topics. So today our special topic is going to be on express entry. Okay, but first let's start with the temporary residence. Now, The first thing I want to speak with you guys about is making sure that you keep your status. So when you extend your status, let's just say you have your study permit. That's valid until let's say August 31st. Okay. Now, as long as you filed an extension before your study permit expires on August 31st, you can continue on to study in Canada until a decision is made in your application. And that's called implied or maintained status, okay? The IRCC website says that you should apply 30 days beforehand. That's just a recommendation. That is not the law. The law is as long as you apply before your status expires, you can continue on until a decision is made on your application, okay? So let's say I filed an extension for my study permit on August 30th, okay? My study permit expired on August 31st. Now, what if I, by accident, submitted a wrong passport, my old passport that had already expired? And let's say on October 31st, I get a decision on my application, and oh no, my application was denied. What happens at this time? Well, the law does give you a second chance. If you are out of status, if you, for example, didn't file your extension on August 31st, you know, September 1st, you wake up, oh shoot, I forgot to file it, okay? You have 90 days from the time that you lost your status to file a restoration. So in my situation, for example, if I got a decision on October 31st that my application was denied, my restoration of status starts when? Not August 31st, but when my status actually expired on October 31st. Okay, so 90 days from the date that you actually lost your status, you can file a restoration. Now, it's not fantastic to be on restoration of status because while you are waiting for a decision to be made on your restoration of status, you actually don't have status. So unlike the situation where I applied to extend my status before it expired, I can continue, you know, studying if I did that. If I'm on restoration, if I forgot, if I filed it on September 1st instead of August 31st, then I cannot study. I have to stop studying until a decision is made on the restoration. I don't necessarily have to leave Canada, but I don't have the ability to study legally until a decision is made, okay? So first thing you want to do when you go home is make sure that you know when your study permit, your work permit expires, and you make sure that you filed an extension before it expires, all right? Okay, so the next thing that we want to talk about is studying and working on a study permit, okay? Now, let me just see something here. First thing I want to speak about is the fact that you have to actively pursue your studies. If you don't study, it doesn't matter if your study permit has not expired yet. You lose your status within 90 days of you stopping your studies, okay? Now, what is actively pursuing studies? It means you're going to class, you are taking exams, you are actively studying. If the school registers you as not being in class or not having registered as a student, then IRCC will have it on their record that because the school can report you and you will lose your status, okay, within 90 days. There are 2 exceptions to this rule. One is the scheduled breaks. So any of the summer holidays or anything on the academic calendar that everybody in your program takes off, that's fine. And also authorized leave. Authorized leave is individualized. So let's say I have a sick relative back home and I can't study this semester because I have to go back. Or let's say I am very sick myself this term and I just can't study. Okay, I can ask the school, before I take it off, I need to get the authorized leave from the school. And if the school gives me authorized leave, then I can take the leave for up to 150 days. So around 1 semester. And then afterwards, I can go back. And so if it's authorized leave up to 150 days, then that's okay. Okay. Now, keep in mind, though, that if you wanted to work while you're studying, you can only work while you are a full-time student. If you're a part-time student, or if you're on authorized leave, okay, you cannot work at all. The only time you can work when you're a part-time student is if you're in the last semester, then you can work, okay? Now, once you've completed your studies, are you a full-time student at that point? No, you're not. The first indication you get from the school that you've completed your program, it doesn't matter if it's a letter, if it's something on your portal, if it's an email, the first indication that they have told you, your transcripts, that you've completed your studies, you can't work at all anymore. You have to stop working, okay? Now, you can start working again if you apply for your postgrad work permit, and we're going to talk about that, okay? The other exception to the rule is if you are in between programs. So let's say you completed a program, and then afterwards, within 1 semester in between, 150 days in between, you've already been accepted to another program. Then IRCC does say that you are allowed to work in between these programs. Okay, so let's talk about the postgrad work permit. The first question that you should ask yourself about the postgrad work permit is, should I apply for a postgrad work permit right now? Okay. The reason why I say you should ask yourself a question, should I apply for a or you can ask the lawyer if you can apply for should you apply for postgrad work permit, is you can only qualify for 1 postgrad work permit in your lifetime. Okay. Now, recently, because of certain situations in the immigration system, the government has allowed for special temporary programs to allow people this year and last year and the year before to apply to extend their postgrad work permit for 18 months. But you cannot depend on this. This is a special program. It could very well be that next year the government does not have the special program again. Okay, so you should count on your postgrad work permit being just once in a lifetime. And the length of your postgrad work permit coincides with the length of your program if it's under the 2-year mark. So if it's 16 months, for example, you'll get a 16-month work permit. Now, when I say the length of your program, it's not necessarily calendar length. It's academic years, okay? If it is that the 16 months equals to 4 semesters, which equals to 2 years, academic years, you can get a 3-year work permit. But if it is the 16 months, it includes some breaks in between, etc., you might just get a 16-month work permit. If you did a 1-year program, you can also do another 1-year program, and you combine it together. 1 + 1 = 3. Okay, 1-year program plus another 1-year program equals, you can also get a 3-year work permit then. Okay, In order to qualify for a post-grad work permit, you have to have maintained full-time status in school during every semester of your program, okay? So what that means is, if you, except in the last semester, if you go through school and you say, oh shoot, you know what, this semester, I might fail a class, I'm gonna drop it. Just be very careful about dropping that class, okay? If you drop that class and you're going down to part-time student status, you may have wasted the entire program and at the end, you're not able to get a post-grad work permit. But if you continue on, even if you fail the class, but you continue on and do whatever you can for that class, then you're still a full-time student throughout the entire semester. Even if you fail that class, you're still good, okay? There's the exceptions of authorized leave. Authorized leave, like we said, you take the entire semester off. And the final semester, you are able to be a part-time student in the final semester. Now, let's talk about when you should apply for the post-grad work permit. The IRCC website says that a student can apply for a post-grad work permit in 180 days. Technically, that's correct. However, that could be an issue for most people, all right? If you just go and apply, let's say 160 days after your study program has been completed, likely you would have been out of status. Why? What's one of the first things I said? You lose your student status within 90 days. So if you apply outside of the 90 days after you complete your program, or if your study permit has expired, okay, whichever is first, then you needed to file a restoration of status and you can't work. So forget that rule about the 180 days. Here's what I want you guys to remember. You should apply for your post-grad work permit within 90 days of the expiry of the completion of your program, or before the expiry of your study permit, okay, whichever comes first, that's your deadline. And if you do so, then if you applied inside Canada, you can work full-time while waiting for your post-grad work permit. And that's very important because you need to have, like sometimes the post-grad work permits take around 5-6 months to obtain. And so during that time, you want to be able to legally work while you're waiting for your work permit. Okay, so you should have your valid study permit. If your study permit expires early, go and extend it right away. You need to have a valid study permit when you apply for your postgrad work permit, and it has to be within 90 days of the completion of your program. All right. Let's talk about one more thing, okay? And that's on well, now we're going to flip over to the permanent residence. And this is something that you really need to understand as well. The National Occupation Classification Codes, the NOC codes, is something that is very determinative in immigration law. What these NOC codes are, they're developed by the Department of Labor. And what they do is they classify basically all of the occupations, okay, that the government can think about, and therefore it is, okay? So they're classifying all of the occupations, and whatever you do, you have to find a classification for the occupation that you've done, okay? And you can Google NOC codes, NOC codes, and it'll come up. Now, recently, since last year, November last year, they've adopted new codes. So since November, so some of your friends who had immigrated earlier, you know, they said, oh, my codes are NOC O, A, B. Well, that's all gone now. Now it's tiers. And tiers 0, 1, 2, and 3 are high skilled. tiers 4 and 5 are low skilled. Compared to before, there are some occupations in the old system that were low skilled that are now high skilled. I've listed some here: truck drivers, nurses, aides, tattoo artists, dental assistants, etc. And some occupations that were previously deemed high skilled are now low skilled. Okay, I put a link here for you guys to see. So why is this important? Because when you're going to apply for permanent residence, you will see that for the vast majority of applications, only high-skilled work matters. The low-skilled work, for the most part, does not count. And so when you look for jobs, or when you're trying to think about the work that you've done before, it is very important that you see that the work that you've done, whether it's high-skilled or low-skilled. I have a lot of people sometimes who don't come to these webinars, who come to me afterwards, and they've had their 3 years of work experience, and they've done work that they thought was high-skilled. They thought it was great for immigration. They come to me and it's low-skilled, and they don't have a chance to get permanent residence. Okay, so I don't want you guys to waste your time. Make sure you know whether or not the occupation that you are working in is high-skilled or low-skilled. All right, now let's talk about express entry. Oops, why is my... Okay, here we go. Okay, so here's how express entry works, okay? First, you have to create an online profile. And the online profile, you can create it if you qualify under one of 3 categories: the Federal Skilled Worker class, Canadian Experience class, or the Federal Skilled Trades class. Once you've created your profile, you can enter the express entry pool. It's very important to understand, however, that just because you've entered the express entry pool does not mean that you have applied for permanent residence, okay? When you enter the pool, you are just saying, I am interested and I qualify under one of 3 categories, but it doesn't mean that you've applied. You can create your profile and it'll be open for 1 year in the express entry pool. And if you're not invited to apply, then your profile will expire. So the key for this is that you're going to be invited to apply, okay? And you get a series of points when you're in the pool that are based on your background, and also if you have provincial nomination that is related to express entry. Not all provincial nomination, only that's related to express entry. All right, so let's first talk about how to get into the pool. So the first category, the Federal Skilled Worker class. Many of you may already qualify if you've had some work experience, and even if you're in school. Okay, the work experience that you need for the Federal Skilled Worker class is very different from the Canadian Experience class. The work experience you need for the Federal Skilled Worker class is work experience that's 1 year of high skilled. We talked about what's high skilled or low skilled, right? High skilled work experience in one occupation for that entire year that is continuous. There are no breaks, okay? And that's also, it's full-time, so at least 30 hours a week. So, that work experience, notice what I didn't say. I didn't say that you couldn't be self-employed in this work experience. You can. I didn't say it had to be in Canada. You can be outside of Canada. I didn't say that it had to be after you finish studying. It could be while you're studying. Okay, I have a lot of people who do their PhDs and masters and all their work is TARA work, and we can still count that as work experience. Okay, this is not work. This is a work experience to qualify you to get into the pool. It's not the work experience necessary to get out of the pool. After that, if you have the work experience, then we look at your language skills, education, age, family, and we do a scoring for you. Okay, you also need, if you're qualifying for this, you need to have a certain amount of financial savings that meets LICO, okay? And there's a minimum scoring for this. Now, most students will qualify under this category if you had that 1 year of work experience that I explained, okay? Now, the second category is called the Canadian Experience class. And this work experience is very different from the federal skilled worker class. This work experience is 1 year in the last 3 years, okay, of application, of work experience in Canada. It has to be for an employer in Canada. And where you are employed by the work, so you can't be self-employed, okay? Where you are employed by the employer in Canada, and it is high skilled. It does not have to be continuous. It can be in different occupations, but it cannot be when you are a full-time student. So this work experience, you know, some of the things that you have to keep in mind is it has to be legal, and you have to, it has to be when you're not a full-time student. So, for example, there was a new policy that was just announced that workers who have work permits can also study as well without getting a study permit. That sounds fantastic, but a lot of workers don't understand that if they're trying to gain their work experience points for express entry, the work experience points for express entry, Canadian work experience, the same kind of work experience as this, they cannot gain it while they are a full-time student, okay? And you should be looking for a T4 from your employer to show that you are an employee, not a contractor with them, okay? There's a difference between contractor and on contract. A contract, everybody has an employment contract, or they should. There has a beginning and end, that's fine. But a contractor is someone who is responsible for themselves. Let's say I want to hire someone to paint my house. Okay, that person is not my employee. I'm contracting them to do the work. So if you go and you start working for someone and they say, oh, I don't want to bother my accountant, I'm just going to give you money, and you go and file your own taxes, that is in the danger zone of being a contractor. So you want to make sure that you get your pay stubs, and the pay stubs deduct EI, income tax, CPP, okay? And you'll get a T4 at the end. The skilled trades, very few people qualify under this. I won't talk about it too much. It's for people in the construction trades. You need to have an LMIA or the trade certification. Okay, so now we have gotten into the pool. Let's talk about the points to get out of the pool, okay? So every couple of weeks or so, the government has a draw where they announce a number. And so the people who are above that number, and they also have other criteria sometimes, and we're going to talk a little bit about that. For example, they might say Canadian experience class only, or federal skilled worker or federal skilled trades class only. Or they might have the special categories for draws, and we're going to talk about that. But normally they'll announce a number, and people who are above that number, you can get invited to apply. So what determines those numbers? The first thing is age. Once you turn 30, every year you get older is not necessarily going to be a happy birthday, okay? During your 30s, it goes down 5-6 points every year. During your 40s, it's -10, -11. By the time you're 45, the good thing is that you don't have to worry about age anymore. The bad thing is that you get a big fat 0 for the age compared to someone in their 20s who gets 110 points. That's a huge differential, okay? Not a lot you can do about age except apply early. Don't wait. Education, if you have a 3-year program and another program on top, that really makes you jump. And these programs can be from any country, okay? Language, if you don't have any work experience, especially in Canada, then we're looking at least CLB 9, which is 9s in CELPIP for each and every category, or 7 in reading, writing, and speaking, 8 in listening for IELTS. Okay, and then there's the TEF and the French exams as well if you're in French. Relevant work experience, Canadian work experience. So that's the same kind of work experience that I explained for the Canadian experience class. Foreign work experience, high skilled work experience outside of Canada. Spouse, if you have a spouse who has a high level of education, language, and Canadian work experience, that could add some points. Otherwise, you might stay the same or have a little bit less. Provincial nominee programs. Those are programs that are going to be, those are programs that are express entry linked, okay? We're going to talk a little bit about that for the Ontario program, okay? Previous study in Canada, those that will get you some points. Arranged employment. A lot of people think, oh, I have a job offer. That means I have arranged employment. No, you need to have the LMIA or employer-specific work permit and a job offer that lasts at least a year and a half after you get permanent residence in order to get arranged employment. It's very specific. Postgrad work permits will not give you arranged employment. Brothers or sisters who are Canadian permanent residents in Canada, you get some. Fluency of French, you'll get a lot of points, but you have to get up to the CLB 7 in order to have that jump in points. And trade certification, which is in the construction trades. Okay. Now, recently, during the summer, the government has come out with another level of draws, which are the new category-based draws. So for those, and so what happens is you're in the pool, and then the computer system will comb through the pool and see those that fall under these kind of occupations, or if you have a CLB 7 in French, you also get that as well. And they will see whether or not you can, and let's say I'm in one of the healthcare occupations, okay? There will be special draws for people just in the healthcare occupation. And because it's special draw for people just in the healthcare occupation, the numbers will be much lower, okay? And that's the idea, that they want to give some priority sometimes for these draws because of occupations that are in demand, or French speakers, lucky French speakers, okay? In order to participate in these draws, you don't have to do anything in particular, except when you're entering into the draw, into the pool, you need to make sure that you specify so that the bots, when they comb through it, they'll recognize that you belong to one of these draws. Okay, so there is another layer on top of this, where if you're in Ontario, and other provinces have other provincial nominee programs that are express entry linked as well. There's too many for me to talk about for every province, so I'm just going to talk about Ontario. If you're in Ontario, Ontario works this way. You can't just go and apply to Ontario yourself, okay? You guys know the dating app Bumble? You know how it works, where the guys can't contact the women directly. First, if you want to date women, you just stay in the pool, get on the app, and then the women go and comb through it and see, okay, I'm interested in this guy, I'll swipe right? And then once they swipe right on it, then you can communicate. That's how OIMP express entry works. You can't go and just apply to them. You go into the express entry pool, then the OIMP goes into the pool and sees whether or not they want to swipe right on you, okay? And then once they swipe right and they give you a notification of interest, then you can actually go and apply to the program. So who do they swipe right on? So there is the human capital stream, which is people who have bachelor's degree, and then there are other things. So these kind of streams, I think the federal government kind of copied Ontario, because this was in place for years, and then the federal government came in is kind of very similar to this. So human capital stream, they say, well, we want to invite people with certain occupations, especially we like tech jobs, people in IT, and so they might invite people in those kind of occupations. But they can be open to other things. They've done it before for people who have job offers, for example. Okay. French speaking as well. So people who have a CLB in 7 in French, and you have a bachelor's degree. Okay. Depending on your points level as well, they might invite you to apply. And then people into the skilled trades. This one is the one I like for trades. So basically, if you are in one of the construction trades, and there's some of the other, I think there's like mechanical trades, etc., and you've worked for 1 year, they might invite you to apply, and their points are also lower. Now, of course, the federal government also has skilled trades, but some of their occupations are a little bit different. Okay. And for skilled trades, you don't have to have CLB, so you don't have to have a bachelor's degree, but you have to have that 1 year of work experience in Ontario. All right, so I have come to the end of my presentation here. Maybe we can go through some questions.
Absolutely. There are a few great questions in the Q&A session. And also,
oh, I think you're on mute.
I am on mute. I'm so sorry. I thought I unmuted. So we're going to go into the Q&A session. There's a lot of questions right now. I also will also put in the chat function email and phone number in case you would like to reach out after the session for further consultation. But 14 questions, so we'll go over as fast as we can. So
Sure.
First question is from Sai. Hi, my wife and I have a post-graduation PGWP. We're a postgraduate work permit, currently working here in Canada. We're interested in applying for a permanent residency. The question I have is whether only one of us can apply for a PR with my partner included as a dependent, or should we both apply separately? What are the pros and cons of submitting a single application?
That's a great question. And this applies not only to people who are married, but also people who are common law. Okay. What is common law? Common law means if you have resided together for 1 year, only 1 year, as in a conjugal relationship, okay, then you're also counted as family. Normally speaking, I normally recommend that people apply together as a family. It is much, much simpler to do it all in one application. You just have to provide a marriage certificate or show that you have lived together for a year, and then you guys get permanent residence together. No one is sponsoring anyone in that situation. You're not responsible after permanent residence for them. It's very simple. You apply together for the most part. Sometimes on the odd occasion, someone really needs those points and their spouse doesn't add, like takes away points, maybe we might think about something else. But normally speaking, it's much better to apply together as a family. If you did it separately, then one person then will need to sponsor the other family member. That can be very expensive, time consuming. The amount of documentation you need is much, much more in order to prove the relationship. And also very importantly, is now normally in married spouses case is not the case, but for common law, a lot of people don't think, oh, 1 year, that is that serious. It doesn't matter if you think it's serious, it is serious for the government. And if you do not declare that someone you have lived together is common law, that's misrepresentation. If you later on want to sponsor that person, you are barred from sponsoring that person because you did not declare that relationship when it became common law. Even if, let's say, you submitted your PR, you weren't common law, by the time you got your permanent residence, you were common law, you will be in trouble then. Not only are you barred from sponsoring them, but you yourself could lose your permanent residency because of misrepresentation. Okay, so keep that 1 year date in your mind. And when we talk about applying, I always want the couple to come together for a consultation with me together, and we figure it out as a family, how it works.
Okay, great advice. Vipin asks, thank you so much, time. I have a question. I came to Canada in LaSalle College, Vancouver for Associate of Arts. Now I am enrolled in cosmetology course in Northern Lights College, Dawson Creek. I have a question. I left my college after 1 semester and I stayed 5 months and 15 days without enrolling in college. Would I face any issue? I know you were talking about being full-time students.
Yeah.
I did not work while I was
Yeah.
not enrolled in college, and I didn't commit any crime or anything. So
Yeah.
what are their chances?
You should come for a consultation, because if you have been out, you didn't graduate, and you were not studying for, 3 months, 90 days, then that very well could mean that you're out of status. So to come for a consultation, we'll talk about it. Okay.
Okay. Salman asks, I'm here in Montreal on a 3-year postgraduate work permit, which I got after my studies. My question is, can I apply for express entry while being in Montreal, stating that I will go to Ontario? I've heard that I have had to provide some extra documents.
Mm-hmm. So that's a very good question. One thing I didn't touch on is express entry is good for everywhere outside of Quebec. So you do have to show that you intend to live outside of Quebec after you get your PR in order to qualify for express entry. Now, sometimes if you say, well, I'm studying right now in Quebec, but after my studies, I intend to live outside of Quebec, it may be possible, but you really have to demonstrate that as well. Okay. So if you are in Quebec, and I know Quebec immigration can be much longer than express entry, and you may need to speak French, etc. And you want to think about express entry, then you do need to seek the consultation from a lawyer who can advise you on what to do in that case.
Okay, great. Next question is, I completed my studies in December. I will, I guess, in December 2023. My husband and my daughter are on dependent visas. Once I apply for my work permit, what should I do to ensure they are also having legal status in Canada?
Right. So if you have your postgrad work permit, or you're applying for your postgrad work permit, and you have a job offer, it used to be you needed to have a high skill. Now even any job offer, high skilled or low skilled, then your spouse can get their work permit extended. Okay. If you don't have a job offer, you can apply for your spouse's work permit to be extended. But if by the time the officer gets to the application and you don't have a job offer, then that application can be denied. Okay, will be denied. Okay, so one thing that people also have to understand is, even though your spouse may have gotten their work permit based on your study permit, just because you've stopped studying doesn't mean that their work permit becomes invalid. So let's say I have a study permit until December of this year, December 31st of this year, and my spouse got his work permit until December of 31st of this year. But I finished in August of this year, okay, at August 31st. It doesn't mean, just because I finished my program and my status ends in 90 days, that my spouse's work permit ends in 90 days. My spouse's work permit is good until it's good, and until December 31st. So I don't necessarily have to file an extension for his work permit until it expires. If I am filing my postgrad work permit and I get a job offer, because then I can work full time before his work permit expires, you might want to do that. Different situations are different, but you can get a job offer, start working based on your own situation, and then file the extension for your spouse. They don't have to file it together with you.
Okay, good. Ian writes, Is the PR pathway in Toronto specific only to certain job titles or description provided by IRCC, or can we apply for a permanent residency for any job that belongs to Tier 3 and above, like 012 positions, as long as we obtain a 1-year Canadian work experience?
Right. So PR pathways there are different PR pathways. Today, I only talked about express entry. For express entry, it's any high-skilled work experience that will count for the different Canadian experience class and federal skilled worker class. However, it's not just there's other, like, you have to be employed, etc. But like I said, there are different kinds of draws too that will give an advantage for people who have certain work experience, like in healthcare, STEM, skilled trades, etc. So whatever it is, it's not just you qualifying, it's also you need to be able to get the points in order to get out of the pool and get invited to apply. So definitely you need to seek the advice and go for a consultation and make sure that so make sure that what you do, you can actually have a good chance to get selected.
Right. Okay. Danelle says, if we enrolled in a 4-year degree at the beginning of the university career and later wishes to change the 4-year to a 3-year degree, will this cause an issue when applying for the work permit? Or maybe a postgraduate?
So as long as your work permit, as long as your program is 2 years or more, you can get a 3-year work permit. So that should be okay. But then, you might want to see whether or not there are any issues. Normally 4 to 3 is not as bad. 3 to 2, you will lose significant points sometimes. So yeah, it depends on for your permanent residence as well. Okay. You know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to share my screen here. And I'm going to just put up my contact information in case anyone wants to contact us for a consultation. We always offer Devant, people who come to Devant seminars, a discount as well. So do tell us you've come from this webinar, and we'll certainly give you a discount for the consultation as well.
Right. I've written it in the chat for everyone.
Okay. Perfect. Yeah. Thank you so much. That's great.
So for the next question, I'm filling the non-express entry application. In some documents, I find it difficult to put all information in one field due to the character limit. What should I do?
That I don't know what express entry application you're doing. That is not what application you're doing. That's non-express entry. So yeah, you probably should hire a lawyer to help you with your case.
It's so specific, right? Adriana writes, I got my postgraduate work permit and I want to apply for PR next year in August. As far as I understand, I have to apply through the express entry visa. My question is, if I have proof of volunteer work in Canada that helps me, does that give me more points if I have a volunteer? If yes, the points depend on how many hours I volunteered or how it worked, or how does it work? And also, if I provide proof of English and French proficiency, I gain more points, or both languages, or is it the same if I only have one language? So essentially,
right. So volunteer work doesn't matter it doesn't give you any points. It's not to say volunteer work is not good. If you do volunteer work, you might just be able to get that job and put in the door to get that job that you want. But volunteer work in itself doesn't give you any points. Certainly language, if you can achieve a certain level for French and English for both languages, depending on the program, it could certainly give you an edge.
Mm-hmm. So would it give you extra points for knowing both languages?
For express entry, yes, if you can achieve it to a certain level, yes.
Great. Yeah. Next question. I'm an electrical engineering diploma student at BCIT in Vancouver. I will be completing my studies in May next year. I'm aiming for a technologist job in Vancouver. How many years of experience will I need for express entry? What other PNP or PR pathway programs would you suggest?
That's very specific. We would
Yeah.
consultation. Yeah, to
Consultation.
go over that. Yeah.
So go through the email or phone number in the chat, okay? Next question. I am on my postgraduate work permit in the process of applying for PR. Highest level degree I have is undergraduate. When applying for PR, do we need to submit only the highest degree? Or should we need to submit like all school mark sheets as well?
So it depends on which category. So for express entry, for example, you only need to show your highest level if it is like a master's or PhD. But if it is sometimes we need to show two programs, and you have to show for both program. As to what you need outside of Canada, you normally need to have an ECA, like the WES, as you know, something from WES or other organizations. If it's in Canada, then you need to show your transcripts, you show your completion, etc.
ECA is evaluation credential or?
Education credential assessment. So if it's from outside of Canada, you need to show that it's equivalent to a Canadian program.
Right. And that's where you go to WES to do that. Okay.
Yeah, there's different organizations. Most people, I think, go to WES because it is generally the largest one as fast.
Right. Ian, what happens if 1 year passed from being in the pool and you still did not receive an invitation? Do you just reapply?
I mean, you know, you can be in the pool forever and you can never apply, you can never be selected. So what you need to do is have a good strategy, you know, and we can plan. You know, we can't say for sure, but we have a good idea on predicting as well. And I normally don't, you know, try to not put all your eggs in one basket. You can do different things. You can, you know, be in the pool for express entry. You can be in the pool for a provincial nominee program. You can be in the pool for, you know, RNEP program. Yeah, there's all sorts of different things that you can try. And in this day and age, it used to be when the points were low, everybody can go through express entry, no problem. But right now, the points are extraordinarily high. They're the highest ever, especially since the category-based draws came into place. They're in the 490s, 500s, and a large majority of people, even if you studied in Canada, won't be able to qualify. So what do you do then? And that's, you know, we're going to be talking about that in future sessions as well. What to do if you don't qualify for express entry? What are the alternatives?
Much needed session for sure. Someone asked, I work as an HR intern for a whole year with my university full time. Can I apply for the federal skilled worker? I have 2 years work experience in Pakistan as well.
Possibly. But we'll have to see. Just because you can qualify under the federal skilled worker doesn't mean that you will have enough points for express entry. So we'll need to talk about that. Yeah.
Consultation. In terms of education, if you finished your studies in other countries outside of Canada more than 10 years ago, do they add points to your, I guess, system or not?
Yes. Studies, yes. Work experience, no. Work experience, we only count within 10 years, but studies, yes.
Okay, so studies outside of 10-year counts. Okay,
yes.
Wonderful. Can we work full-time when we are in our last semester and enrolled in part-time semester? I think you kind of touched upon this. Like only taking 3 courses. So the answer is yes.
Okay. Last semester you can. Other semesters you cannot.
Great. Can you work in Ontario for 1 year, but then proceed to apply for PNP in other provinces?
So provincial nominee programs are very jealously guard their programs. What provincial nominee programs are is that the federal government is in charge of immigration. Okay. The federal government has made an agreement with every province to allow each province to select a certain number of people for permanent residence. And so every province, they have a quota of how many spots they can fill up. So each province really only their interest is to select people who are going to reside in their province. Otherwise, what's the point? So if you are residing in Ontario and you want to apply to BC, unless you're going to move to BC, there could be a strong, you know, show that you're not going to intend to live in BC. So you have to, make arguments as to, my family's there, I'm actually going to move there, I have a job there, etc. The flip side is if you were studying in Ontario and you applied under the provincial nominee program, and then all of a sudden, and then you've left Ontario, you're in BC. Then even if you've been approved for the Ontario program, later on when you're still applying for the permanent residence, they're going to see whether or not you're still in Ontario. If you move to another province, you very well could have your application denied.
Oh, wow.
Okay, but the thing about provincial nominee programs is it only lasts until you get your permanent residence. After you get your permanent residence, you have the mobility rights to move anywhere you want. Okay, right. So it's only up until you get your permanent residence. But until you get your permanent residence, you really need to demonstrate intent to live in a particular province.
Great advice. So this student got the Ontario nominee program, a master graduate stream. Currently working on a PR application. I also have a job offer. Do I still need to show funds as I am working?
Yeah, I mean, if you have a job offer and you can show it depend every situation is different. I don't necessarily comment on your situation, but most of the time if you have a job offer, then you can demonstrate that you have enough funds.
Okay. Just looking at the time right now, we've got 4 minutes left, 11 questions. We're going to try to go as fast as we can, but if we don't, you have the email and the phone number to contact Elizabeth afterwards. Next question, is international students still qualified for postgraduate work permit if they completed the program in Canada, but it's 100% online? Does that make a difference?
That's a very good question, and that's a big issue. So during COVID, they were very flexible on studying online, but now it's ending. And if you are online more than 50% of the time, then you very well it may not qualify for the postgrad work permit. Okay, so I think it would even started from last year. But basically, don't go online, especially over 50% of your program. You could very well not be able to qualify for the postgrad work.
Okay. Yeah. Hello, this is an important session. How many hours per week are 2023 international students supposed to work during school days?
Okay, so when you are in class, off campus, you can only work up to 20 hours. On campus, there's no limit on how many hours you can work on campus. Can you do 20 hours off campus and no limit on 40 hours on campus? Yes, you can. Okay. I don't know how you're going to get any studying done, but you can do that, technically speaking it. Okay. But it's only up to 20 hours a week. During scheduled breaks, you can work full time.
Right. Okay. Ali asked, can we apply for a federal express entry and the provincial Ontario concurrently? Another question, does being a TA during a full-time master program count as work experience for federal express entry? For example, I have a TA, teacher's assistant contract for 1.5 years.
Yeah. So yes, you can apply for express entry and OIMP concurrently. You have to qualify for both, but yes, you can do that. Now, here's the thing. For TARA work, if you're a full-time student, it doesn't count for Canadian work experience, but it could help to demonstrate you have the work experience to qualify to get into the pool under the federal skilled worker class. The thing about TAs is oftentimes the work hours are quite small, compared to RA. RA, a lot of times you can demonstrate full-time work. So, it's very possible to use that work experience to qualify you for the pool, but we'd have to discuss how many points you can get without the work experience outside of studying as well.
Let's see if I can squeeze one more question in. In case I already have my PR and I'm single, who can I sponsor? Who's considered my first degree?
So you can sponsor your spouse, common law married, your children. You can sponsor your parents, but the parents one, you have to get into the lottery usually and wait until the program opens, and you can sponsor your grandparents. Siblings, normally you can't just sponsor a sibling. However, if your sibling is a dependent child of your parents and you are sponsoring your parents, you can also sponsor your sibling as dependent children of your parents. Okay, but the dependent children, the age is 22. So over as soon as they reach their 22nd birthday, they're no longer a dependent child.
Okay, I hope that answers that question.
We're going to be doing a sponsorship session, I think, in the new year as well. So we'll talk about that more then.
Yeah, keep an eye out for these immigration Q&A sessions with different topics, as Elizabeth was saying, and please come back for them. I do have a mini evaluation before you leave. Please take a second to rate the session, but thank you very much, Elizabeth, for your insight into this. Very, very important for all the audience members here. And thank you for your time, everyone. Have a good night and look out for upcoming sessions with Elizabeth again.
Great to be here. Thank you so much. Take care, everyone.
Have a good night. Bye.